Hey there. Thanks for tuning in. You ready for another episode of my Bigfoot sighting? Alright then, let's do this.
Seen a bunch of rundown no-horse towns where the church is the backbone, love's in the plow, and the five-string melodies grooving, with the farmland rows where the roots run deep, beyond the noise of the busy streets, where the songs of the South are soothing. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Yeah.
My first Bigfoot sighting was in 2011 in North Georgia. The boys were in their 20s at the time. Been doing this since I was a kid, but had never done it with a group. So I had seen where the BFRO, the Bigfoot Field Research Organization, was doing an expedition, and we decided to go. Over the years, I found tracks and saw partial sightings, but just really hadn't done anything as a group. So I wanted to try that. So we got up to there on Thursday night, the last weekend in September of 2011. There had been another expedition there the week before, which was kind of unusual. The leader was the same person. His first name was Matt. He had told us what had gone on this trail, and they'd had some rocks thrown, grunts, sticks, that kind of thing. To be completely honest, I was a little leery about going with a group. There's 25 of us, and we're all sitting around with our headlamps on, our red lights, and we're heading out single file. I really felt like it was going to be a snipe hunt or something. But we were up the mountains pretty far. We had gone out on this trail at about 10 o'clock at night. It was a horseshoe-shaped trail that went around this meadow. Since there was about 25 of us, we divided up in groups of 5, and we're going to start out walking this trail. And as we do, they're going to drop 5 of us off at a time in different locations. Well, it just so happened that the boys and I, a SWAT member from Charlotte and another gentleman from Chattanooga, had got dumped at the spot where they had all the activity the weekend before. So beautiful night out, not a lot of moonlight, but a little bit, pleasant weather, shirt sleeve weather, that kind of thing. So once we got all spread out, the folks the farthest away from camp did their whoops and knocks, nothing. Next group did their whoops and knocks, nothing. Third group did their whoops and knocks. And in between them and us, we heard something go, whoop, whoop. And I thought, oh man, that's a big bear out there. And then everybody heard something a little different. Now, when we discussed this later, the boys said they heard birds. I heard something coming through the woods that sounded like a squeaky bicycle wheel, just a ee kind of thing. So the gentleman was with us from SWAT. He had all black attire on, and we could hear things coming through. And while we're listening to the woodland noise, he realized his hydro pack had been leaking, so his shirt was soaking wet. So he took off the black shirt, and he had a white T-shirt on underneath. And if you've ever had a Georgia night down there when the moon's up just right, it really lights it up. So you could tell he had this shirt on for a long ways. So as we're sitting there, we could hear bipedal footsteps coming through the brush. There was a lot of mountain laurel up in there and heavy vegetation. Well, Jason, the leader there, he had getting ready to do his whoops and knocks. I was sitting at his feet on the ground leaning against a fallen log, and he put his hands to his mouth. And as he put his hands to the mouth to call, he stopped, reached down, and was rubbing his leg. I said, Jason, what's going on? What's happening? And he goes, something hit me in the leg with a rock. I said, oh man, no, it's acorns. I said, I don't know how many of them I've had fall off of me. He goes, no, this one was a rock. He goes, I tell you, it was a rock. And I'm like, okay. So he got out his night owl mono night vision and started looking around. And as he come back around to, that would be the north, he let out an expletive. And I said, what? and he was like over behind this tree, and about maybe 15 yards, 20 yards out, I could see something moving, but I couldn't tell what it was. I could see the height and everything. To me, it looked about 9 foot tall, light gray, and it was doing the peekaboo thing around a tree. It would look at us from one side, and it would kind of go back in behind the tree, and it would come out at a different angle on the other side. So as we're watching that, and I'm looking out I'm looking out towards the south, where the trail is we came in at. As I'm looking out this way, I just looking at stars out there that I could see, and I realized two of them were twinkling pretty regular. Well, to me, it looked like eye shine. So I asked Jason, I said, when you get a second, swing your night vision over there and see what you see. I said, I see eye shine. He told me he didn't believe in eye shine, but he went ahead and looked, and he went, crap, I think there's two juveniles over there. So as we're looking that way, the big one made a big racket against the tree. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was just a big commotion. So we all turned back there to look at the big one. And as we're sitting there looking at the big one, there's a stick that comes in from the south. It's probably 2-3 foot long, inch and a half, 2 inches in diameter. And it flew in between Jason and I horizontally. So it didn't fall from a tree or anything. It was definitely thrown at us. So we were just kind of freaking out that was really what was going on. And of course, we're on the radios trying to get a thermal imager down there, and everybody's excited. Well, then we could hear the big one just walked off. And we're like, well, and this has been going on for like 30 minutes, which is very unusual for a Sasquatch sighting to last that long. But it was definitely wanting to know what we were doing. So we're kind of waiting for everybody to gather up. The farthest team is starting to come back. I'm leaning against this log, and I hear something walking, heavy. I heard it step on a log. I heard the log groan with the weight, and then a big thud when it come down the other side, and then 2 or 3 more footsteps. So at this point, Jason is right at the bottom of my feet. In fact, he stepped on the stick and hit me in the privates, and I thought for sure something had me. But I told him, I said, did you hear that? He said, well, you tell me what you heard, and I'll tell you if I heard the same thing. So we agreed on what we heard. So it wasn't more than about 10, 15 seconds. We heard 3 big running steps. And on the trail we come in on, you could see the silhouette of the Sasquatch. I'm going to say it was probably male because as big as it was, it just blocked out the sky from where I was sitting. I would say probably 9 foot tall, 4 foot, 4.5 foot wide at the shoulders. Very huge thing. Wind was out of the wrong direction for a smell. Just blue glowing eyes, looked at us for just a second. And it was close enough. If it wanted to, it could have reached out and grabbed any of us. And then it just silently was gone. The shadow, the silhouette was gone. You could see the stars again, and everything was gone. So we are like, oh, this was so cool, and very excited. So went back to camp. We spent the night, and then got up next morning, went back out, and found where the brush had been smashed down, and one thing after the other. So anybody that's ever been on an expedition with BFRO, Thursday is your night you get there, and then Friday, Saturday, you're actually doing a lot during the day, and Sunday, everybody breaks camp and goes home. So we went out and did some scouting farther up on the mountain that day, and found a nice spot, had a big ravine, small hollow that ran for quite a ways down through there, where the 2 trails split up. So 2 groups, one went on this trail, one went on that trail, with a ravine in the middle. It was so windy, you couldn't hear yourself. I've never been nervous during this Sasquatch thing, but we were spaced out about 50 yards apart. You couldn't hear anything. All you could hear was branches snapping and stuff falling out of the trees. And I laughed because you're sitting there in the dark. I just felt like I'd turn on my flashlight and there'd be like a dozen of them standing there slobbering over me, and I would never know it. So we went back to camp, and one of the things they had suggested we do is take old CDs and then hang them up, make a mobile out of them, because it's just, something different for them to track. I had left mine in the dining fly because I hadn't decided where I wanted to put it yet. So we gave up on the mountain because it was just too windy. I mean, we were literally maybe 50 feet from one group to the other at one point, and you couldn't hear each other. So we got back to camp. My boys went on back ahead of me after we got parked, and they said, "You got to get over here and see this." Well, my mobile had been all twisted and braided together and moved at the campsite. My lantern with the salt and pepper shakers I'd left on the table had been moved to the other end. And as we're looking at this, somebody's yelling. One had ran through camp. Supposedly a Sasquatch had ran through camp and tripped over the tent and knocked it all down. But we couldn't get it on a thermal. So as we're looking at my mobile, we realized there looks like fingerprints on there. And I don't think I mentioned this, probably 80% of the people there were some sort of police officer. So we all knew they had guns. Nobody was going to run through camp in a costume more than once. But they come down and looked at it and said, "Yeah, it's fingerprints. Leave it up overnight. We'll take it down and see what's going on in the morning." All right. So we did that. I woke up about 5:30 in the morning, and I could tell that Sasquatch would know we were sleeping because all you could hear was people laying around farting and snoring in the dark. So it was pretty funny. But I got up about 7 o'clock that morning, and my lantern and everything had been moved back to the position it was when it all started. So then the rest of the weekend, we really never had anything after that. It was a pretty calm weekend. So I was excited. That was the first time I could say that I saw a Sasquatch and knew I saw a Sasquatch. I've seen things in the past where you're just catching a glimpse of the fur, or, you think you saw it, but you're not really sure. Your mind wants to play games with you. But that was definitely a Sasquatch. I've been very fortunate. I've led several of the BFRO expeditions in Florida, and we had one, I want to say the last one we had one in 2013. And at that time, it was probably the weirdest one that we've had. We were in a state park out near Tallahassee in the Panhandle. This would have been about September of 13, I think. The good thing about squatching in Florida is all the trails are pretty much white sand, so they reflect the light really, really good. So you can go out and not have much moonlight and not need your lights or anything. So it's a great time to do this. So first night out, Thursday night, and hike this loop trail and see what we can see. Funny thing is, on the way out there, we could hear this dog just raising Cain across the pasture, probably half a mile away, and just barking. And with the park being there, we wouldn't have thought he'd been too barky. Used to people coming through and that kind of thing. So we get out there. I've got an old thermal with me, and I am doing the caboose position. That's the guy at the very end of the group that watches to make sure we don't lose anybody. I had a gentleman with me, and I want to think his name was Richard, but I'm not sure. He was not a big camper, just first time in the woods at night. So he was staying really close to me. So we were hanging back about 50 yards from the main group, and we come out to a fence line, a corner of a fence line, and the trail actually is about 20 yards from the fence line. There's the trail that curves. When you come in on it, you're heading east, and then it curves to the north. So I was walking behind these guys, kind of bored, didn't really feel good. I've had some back surgery, so I don't walk real well. So I got on top of this log, and I just started looking. I did some knocks. I did 3 wood knocks, and nothing. We wait a little bit more, nothing. And then I let the new guy do a wood knock. So as he's doing the wood knock, I'm kind of looking around with my thermal imager. And about 50, 60 yards away, I see a raccoon on top of a log in the thermal. Or at least that's what I thought it was. So as I'm looking at it, I see shoulders come up over the log. It was no longer a raccoon. it was a Sasquatch laying behind this log on the ground. So I got on the radio and hollered for a teammate, Bob, because his thermal records. And I said, they told me what was going on. And I said, would you mind coming over here? He's like, nope, I'll come over and record it. You walk towards where you saw it and see what you find. Thank you, Bob. So the newbie and I, we go over and look, and you can still see the heat signature laying on the ground where it had been. And then there was a path where it had walked off in this tall grass towards the fence line. Now, between the fence line and this trail is kind of a triangular shaped piece of brush area, 25 yards long, 15, 20 yards deep. So we're on the backside of this fence. I've got the brush between me and the rest of the group. And the newbie is probably about 50 feet behind me where he can see the other teammates. So as I'm talking to him, I see Bob coming up the trail, or at least I can see his red light, I thought. But as I'm talking to Bob, asking him where, if he's seen anything, where's everybody at? The new guy is telling me that Bob is not there. Everybody is accounted for over where the new guy is standing. So I'm like, crap, turn around and it's gone. So to this day, I don't know if I was talking to a Sasquatch or what was going on, because it was in the deep shadows. It wasn't out where the moonlight was hitting it. And like I said, I just thought it was Bob and he wasn't hearing me. So we kind of gathered all together at a tree about 100 yards from where I had just been standing. And we're talking about it. One guy had a bionic ear, and he said he could hear it run through the woods. Another gentleman had a thermal and forgot to put his smart card in, so that didn't work, but he'd seen it. So we're all standing there and we're talking, and we decided that we're going, okay, that's probably not going to have anything else tonight. Let's head back towards camp. And sometimes we've had them parallel us on the trail as we go along. So I said, well, when you get up there where you can see it was a little shallow depression in the ground, not very much, maybe 6 inches, a foot at the most. I said, I'm going to drop down in that and I'm going to listen to see if I can hear them walking. So, okay. And the expedition walked on. It hadn't been 30 seconds. I could hear one paralleling the group as they were walking along. And as they were walking along, I got the creepiest feeling, and the hair in the back of my neck stood up, and I've never had that happen. I turned around, and there was one that walked out from behind the tree. We were just all standing by, and walked into the forest on the other side of the trail. I say it walked into the forest because at that spot, it's almost a pasture area with just a few trees. So I had to cross an open area. There was a fence there. I never saw it go over the fence. It just went in like behind a tree, and then I never saw it again. I don't believe in the interdimensional thing, but that time it made me really think, because it just disappeared. So it wasn't very much longer after that as we're walking back. We passed a small herd of deer that were out there. It took me about a month before I put two and two together. I think we walked into a deer hunt. I think the one that we saw behind the stump, behind the fallen log, was the killer. And the others that we saw were there for driving. I think that's what we walked into. It made sense. They were, the fence was behind the one that was laying down. So the deer couldn't have got, it would have had to get into the fence line, and they were pretty high fences. So I really think that's what we walked into. So we didn't really see anything else after that. The next night we went over to, and I cannot think of the folks' name. They've been on the show several different times, but they don't live too far from where we're at. We usually end up there just to visit if nothing else. And we had one lady that didn't really want to go, and the rest of us went over there. We hadn't been gone 45 minutes before she's calling. Things are throwing sticks at her and pine cones and one thing after the other. So just a lot of activity there. So I was very fortunate. I'd really like to get a daytime look and see what's going on, but I've not been fortunate enough yet. So my last expedition I did with the group was in 2015 of October. Same area, different state park, within about 20 miles of each other. So we've been to this place. The rangers call us all the time. Found tracks over here today. They were in the garbage last night, that kind of thing. So we had we had a nice group camp. I want to say there was like 30 of us, something like that. Several people camped. We camped in a group camp there at the park. A lot of people stayed up around that. About 4 of us spread out closer towards the wood line. Myself and 2 Karens were down that way. The first night we were there, several of us got there like the Wednesday night instead of Thursday night. So it was a real foggy night come out. Porta potties are up about 100 yards, about 75 yards from where we're at. And as I'm watching up through there with a thermal, I swore I saw something walk up there, but 2 ladies that had never been in the woods before were real close, and they swore they heard the door slamming on the potty, but we never did find anything. So Thursday night, went out, really didn't get a whole lot. I want to say it rained even maybe a little bit. But then the next day we were out scouting, and sure enough, man, there was these tracks all down this creek. We followed them for miles, and they almost looked human, but they were so sunk in the ground. It had to be one heavy kid. I mean, we're talking at the time I was almost 290, and my feet didn't go in the sand near as much as this little track did. It just looked like a baby Squatch track. Well, nobody could decide on that, so we put up there was a primitive campsite about a half mile from the main campsite. So there's been actual thermal images taken at that particular spot. That's supposed to be authentic. I've seen it. I can't really tell for sure. It almost looked animated to me. But anyway, we went down there. I have a habit of when I go out, I take the glow sticks, the little chem sticks that you break and snap, and I cut a hole in one end, and I just do little drops or something as I'm leaving camp going back. My thought is, maybe it'll glow enough if my flashlight dies, I can find my way back. But also I found that squatches seem to be interested in the glow in the dark stuff. So we're down by primitive site 1. There was a stump. I put I just cut one open and spread the glow all over the log. Well, the next day we come back down there and there's this huge track right by it. And it really looked like something had put his hand in it and smeared it. I mean, you couldn't tell that it was a handprint, but you could tell something had smeared this other than what it was when we left. So as we're walking back up towards the main camp, it's a long trail. They actually drive some vehicles down there, but it's all sand. And I'm watching these same tracks as I'm going up there. Several of us, or I think there's maybe in that group, probably about 6 of us. And we could see the tracks just plain as day. I mean, you could tell it was Bigfoot. On the curve on the inside of the foot, it was pretty deep. Tracks were maybe, and this is hard packed sand. We're not talking the loose beach sand. The tracks are probably a half inch, 3/4 inches deep in the sand. So there was some weight to it. And then it cut up the same trail that we coming back from camp all the time. So we didn't think anything about it. So Saturday night, we got back in 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning and went to bed. Well, I always set my audio recorder up when I go to sleep at night, just in case. You never know what's going to happen. So I know what time it was. It was 4:15 in the morning. I heard a huge thump. Felt like, sounded like a tree fell or something along those lines. And then, like just a couple seconds later, something slapped my tent and my head. And I jumped up. The windows were open in the tent, looked out, couldn't find anything, got outside, walked around, couldn't find anything. I thought, man, I must have just dreamed that, because, you're all Sasquatched up when you're out there anyway. That's all you can think about. So the next morning I get up and Karen is about 10 yards from me. I go over there and start telling a story. She gets this big smile on her face and starts laughing. And I say, what's wrong? She goes, you need to talk to the other Karen. She was here and told me the same story about 20 minutes ago. So she got slapped during the night too. So they're definitely out there. I've seen some things when I've been out doing investigations that I just don't know how to place some of them. And yes, we do go investigate some where you think, and what was I thinking? Then I came out here. But it has been a great experience. Like I said, I'm 65. I've been doing this since off and on since I was about 10 when I saw what was it, Saga or Augusty magazine with the Patty on the cover, and was always there ever since. saw the Minnesota Iceman when I was a kid in the tow trailer for I think a quarter at a mobile home show or something like that, or the mall. I can't remember, but it was something along those lines. And then, growing up in Illinois, we had Momo the Monster there in the 70s that was scaring the crap out of everybody. But I've come across some real stories. I've talked to some real true people that, are just honest as the day is long, and they truly believe what they saw was Sasquatch. I hadn't been doing this very much since the kids were out of college, were in college and stuff. When they got out, I happened to look up, some stuff, and I looked up, I found an Alabama Bigfoot website, and there was a sighting that hadn't happened that long ago, and I was thinking it'd probably be at the other end of the state, but it was only like an hour and a half away in Clark County, Alabama. And went over there, and the first thing there's a little country store that sits out there, and I'm not kidding you, it sounds like a joke, but really all they carry is gas and some RC cola and moon pies. That's about it. And I'd asked the gentleman, is there any public land I can get on? He's like, what are you looking for? I said, Sasquatch, Bigfoot. Oh, we don't have those around here. And so he sent me to the scariest cemetery I'd ever been in, though. So anyway, before I left, he was telling me, stories about Bigfoot that, he said wasn't there, half an hour ago. Clark County, Alabama is about one of the most desolate spots in the South. Very few people live out there. It's mostly woods and riverland. A few years ago, there was a kid out there that was hunting, I believe, and fell in a hole where a tree had been knocked over and was down there for, I want to say, a couple days. They would never say how he got out, but if you talk to the locals, Sasquatch pulled him out. And I've had some good sightings over that way. I've had where the Sasquatch has put his hands on a trailer where on the double side where the aluminum is oxidized, and just put his hand on there and walk the whole length of that trailer with his hand on there. It was at least twice as big as mine. Back in the 80s, there was a story which I could not track down. The newspaper said they didn't have it, but people told me they had seen it in the newspaper. A dog had brought up a human-like arm with white fur on it, but it was too big to be a human arm, and the sheriff supposedly had it. The sheriff wouldn't tell me that they had it or they wouldn't have it. But the people I talked to down there, it had been on their front porch. The lady starts describing stuff to me, and she starts crying because it upset her so much. So I guess in closing, they're out there. If you come across, treat them like a person. That's what I relate to them most as. Nobody's ever been hurt by one, but there's always a chance. People, animals, we all have a bad day. We all have different personalities. So keep out there, keep looking, stay alert, keep squatching.
Well, that's it for tonight's show. If you've had a Bigfoot sighting and would like to be a guest, please go to mybigfootsighting.com and let us know. Thanks for listening. Have a great night.
Seen a bunch of rundown no-horse towns where the church is the backbone, love's in the plow, and the five-string melodies grooving, with the farmland rows where the roots run deep, beyond the noise of the busy streets, where the songs of the South are soothing. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Yeah.